Welcome to the Fantasy Football Anonymous Show. This is Matt Schroeder. I am here with Rob Shaw, and we're going to be talking to you today a little bit about last week, what has been happening in the NFL. Hopefully your guys' playoff matches went well, and you advanced, and hopefully are in the championship right now. But for those of you that aren't, we still are going to have some advice and some tips. And you're still going to want to be watching because the stuff that happens at the end of this year is going to matter for next year's draft. So that's always important to keep on going with the NFL season because you never know what can change within a couple games. But Rob, last week, every single favorite won the game. We're getting to the point where Vegas knows what's going on. They're picking the right teams and the favorites are winning and the losers are losing. What were your thoughts?
Well, it's funny you say that, and I feel like that's pretty common that Vegas, as the year goes on, there's just chaos all the time. But late in the season, really the last 6 games, I feel like that's when we know what teams are good and who the frauds are. I can't believe Buffalo was favored in that Miami game. I didn't know that until I read that statistic. I was like, oh, they were favored. That's kind of funny. But I don't know. The thing I learned this week most of all was, that Rams Seattle game. The Rams are a really good team. We kind of already knew that. But we've been talking on this show a lot. I actually picked Seattle to win that game last week while you were gone. So I have to own up. I was way off. And Joe pointed out he had the Rams slightly edging Seattle. We were both kind of off on that if we were betting. But, they're too banged up right now. Their offensive line, Russell Wilson was just running for his life, and you can only do that so much. This just isn't the year for them. I project them to miss the playoffs this season. Something that up until last week, I wasn't going to say because, they beat the Eagles earlier this season. They seem to get it together even when they're struggling because of, great quarterback play and a veteran defensive core. But they're just too banged up right now. I don't think they have anything left in the tank. I got New Orleans, Atlanta, and Carolina, all 3 making the playoffs. That's my prediction.
Wow.
So what do you think? That's your division with the Panthers. What do you think about that?
Oh, man. The wild card in the NFC is going to have a lot of wins, both of them. If we're looking at the standings right now, the Cowboys are 8-6, the Lions are 8-6, the Falcons are 9-5, and the Seahawks are at 8-6. And that doesn't even include the Panthers that are 10-4. Out of those 5 teams, there's 2 spots open. So we're probably looking at both wild cards with a minimum of 10 wins, which is something that we have not seen, especially in the NFC, for a very long time. The Cowboys are actually going to be facing the Seahawks this week, so it's going to be a very big game. Whoever loses is out of the playoffs for 100% sure. But I will say, Rob, that definitely could happen, but the Falcons are going to be facing New Orleans this week, and then they get the Panthers next week. So both teams are going to have a lot to play for, so if they lose both of those, then they could easily miss out on the playoffs. I think New Orleans is going to make it easy. But, what we're going to see, it's going to definitely be an interesting race. But to kind of get into my thoughts of last week, the Carolina Panthers figured out ways to win. Last week we beat, or 2 weeks ago, I should say, the Carolina Panthers took down the Minnesota Vikings at the time, 10-2. Big win. Saved our season. And then the next week, we're going up against a Green Bay team that had won a few games recently with their backup quarterback, was getting Aaron Rodgers back, and kind of looked destined to win out and make the playoffs. And then we knocked them off as well in a game that shouldn't have been as close as it was. We let them back into the game at the very end. But, yeah, the Panthers have a habit of making other teams – it's not like the Panthers always look good. But what they are very good at is making other teams look bad as well. And we're just better than the bad teams we're facing.
I feel like they play to their competition oftentimes. They'll have games where they're incredible. They beat the Vikings. then, they lose to Chicago earlier. Like, they're just hot and cold. They beat the Jets a few weeks ago, but it was a lot closer than I think we were expecting. But I called it. All right, I'm taking. I took my shame on the Seahawks call. I predicted Carolina to win, and I said that it would come down to an Aaron Rodgers bad throw, a little bit of rust. And that's what it was, fired short into probably a throw he shouldn't have attempted. And yeah, they picked him off a lot. And while he did, bounce back, and he's Aaron Rodgers, he very rarely has putrid games, but it was enough. 3 turnovers. That's a big deal. It's hard to recover from that. So it's funny. I had both the Bills and the Panthers game on, and we were letting them back in at both teams. The Dolphins got an onside kick, and then the Panthers let I was like, wow, they really want to lose this. But they both held on to win. So
they both barely held on to win. But yeah, the Panthers, well, I guess the Packers, Aaron Rodgers threw 3 picks, 3 interceptions. I think he hasn't done that for like the past 7 years or something like that is a statistic that I remember seeing. And so it's very rare to get Aaron Rodgers on a bad day. Probably some of that was rust. But I like to credit our defense too.
That's a little more common.
Exactly. All right. Well, Rob, let's go ahead and move on to our love this week, hates this week, and our sneaky picks this week. We're going to go ahead and start with loves, and I'm going to let you start first. Hopefully you didn't steal any from me this week.
So for my love, I'm not going to steal any from you this week. Of course I'm not. How could we? So quarterback, I have Big Ben Roethlisberger this week.
Wow.
Going up against Houston. Like the matchup.
Without Antonio Brown.
Yeah. I mean, well, listen, Houston's pass defense has not been good this season. Really, their defense has been disappointing as a whole. I know they've been a little better against the run, but yeah, not their year, Houston, especially with Watson getting taken out. But I like Big Ben. I thought Martavis Bryant looked pretty good. And I also thought that, not Eli. I was about to say Eli Rogers. Schuster, with him being back, I think he'll get involved. And Jesse James, despite that touchdown getting called back, he's been playing some good football. And you always got Bell as a pass catcher, and I think they're going to be doing a lot of that. He's usually the center of the offense if Brown is out. And he's been putting up solid numbers. He's been the hot hand. He was almost unplayable mid-season, early in the season, and now he's on fire. He's one of the hottest quarterbacks in the NFL for fantasy, and I think they're going to be pretty fired up about this game after what happened last week. For my running back, I got Zeke. He's back. I get him back for the championship. I made it through. But now Zeke owners can be very happy, but they're playing Seattle. But Seattle has just this has not been the same defense. This is kind of one of those like sneaky good picks because a lot of people might be down on them, like thinking, oh, it's Seattle. The defense has not played as well this season. And, they gave up so much to Todd Gurley last week. I just think Zeke, they're going to feed him. He's got fresh legs. He's going to go have a big game. This burned me last week. I liked him last week. So I'm going again with Devin Funchess, the one-catch wonder from last week. Devin Funchess, they're going up against Tampa Bay, another bad pass defense. Funchess, he's a good receiver. I just don't see them keeping him, shut down 2 weeks in a row. So I think he's a safe pick this week. I don't think Greg Olsen, him coming back, looking a little healthier, I still think Funchess will get some good targets this week, especially, with the off week. But I like him. And the way you beat I almost said the way you beat the tight end, the way you beat the Denver Broncos with the tight end. So I'm going with Vernon Davis, even though he's burned me a couple weeks here. Yeah, I mean, he's one of the main points of this offense. And, Denver's played a little better defensively the last couple weeks. So why not go after their weakness? I think Kirk Cousins will look to him quite a bit this game.
Yeah. Yeah, I could definitely agree on that. For my love quarterback of the week, you love Devin Funchess. I love me some Cam Newton.
Yeah.
I think, yep, Cam has been playing a lot better recently. He had a great game against Green Bay last week, and I think he's just going to continue to beat a very beat-up Tampa Bay defense. They've lost a lot of players to injury, and they don't have anything to play for. So I think he could have a very nice game. For running back, I'm going to be picking Alex Collins, who's going up against Indianapolis. And Alex Collins has played very well. He hasn't been on a very good offense, which has been one of the problems. But against Indianapolis, this is going to be a lower scoring game, and I think he's just going to get a lot of opportunities. I could see him with 20 touches this game. And if he gets 20 touches, he's probably going to be hitting 100 yards, and you hope for the touchdown there. And so I like him to have a pretty solid game. You're definitely starting him. For my love of the week at wide receiver, I'm going to go ahead and pick Julio Jones. This is a massive game for Atlanta. This is their Super Bowl. If they lose this, they potentially could miss the playoffs because of this game. So I think they're going to get Julio involved very early. I also love Devontae Freeman, but he's been great the entire year, so no reason to say you really love him. And Julio's been pretty good too, but he's been a little bit more off and on. But this week, I think he's definitely on. And last, I'm going to be going with Delanie Walker versus the Los Angeles Rams. It's a good matchup. He's been putting up decent numbers over the past couple of weeks. And the Rams, I think, are around 20th in the league to points per tight end. And I look for them to be playing some catch-up. And so Marcus Mariota will probably be looking for Delanie Walker more than a couple times this game. Moving on to my hate list. Hopefully Rob didn't steal any of mine. Rob, I'm gonna put someone on this list who a couple games ago you put this person on your love list in the same matchup. Tyrod Taylor versus New England. We all know what happened that game. He went down early, and actually I guess he went down close to the end of the game, but he was not good.
He got hurt. He got injured on like the first drive, but he played
stayed in the
game. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. And I'm not liking in this game either. The New England defense has actually been pretty decent the second half of the season. And they just know how to shut down Buffalo. Best luck to your Bills, but I'm just not liking Tyrod this game. On my running back hate list, I'm going to be putting Samaje Perine. Had a bad game last week. He's going up against Denver this week. They're out of the playoffs, so they don't really have much to fight for either, except for maybe trying to convince Kirk Cousins to stay. And so who knows? Maybe they'll let him try to control the offense a little bit more while trying to convince him, show him what can happen, and they'll be giving him more opportunities. And so I just don't like, especially with Denver's defense, I don't like where this is headed for Perine. On my hate list at wide receiver is a name that, if you've listened to the podcast a couple times, you've heard me say I hate a lot this year. That's Mike Evans. Why? Because Mike Evans doesn't perform when you need him to. He's not going to perform this week either. Tampa Bay has nothing to play for. Carolina defense has done a decent job of shutting down wide receivers throughout the year. And while I could see Mike Evans having, the 550, I don't think that's going to be good enough, especially in non-PPR leagues. He's at closer end of the back 20 for me at my wide receiver rankings. So if you have other people that you can feel confident with, for example, I'd rather start Juju Smith-Schuster than Mike Evans this week. So if you have other people, I'd look to that. And lastly, at tight end, I'm going to be going with Jimmy Graham against Dallas. Yeah, Jimmy Graham. Rob, do you know what his stat line was last week?
I had Jimmy Graham.
1 reception for -1 yards. That's not good.
That's the answer.
Most of his points this year have come from the touchdown, and he hasn't begun those over the past 2 weeks. And so I'm just not liking him this week either. And I would stay away from him if you can, if you have better options.
Yeah, right now I just don't love what Seattle's doing. I mean, obviously you're starting Russell Wilson. He's still a good play, but I just don't trust Seattle right now. And as far as the Bills go, yeah, I think if they have any shot at the game, they're going to have to get McCoy. I think he's the guy that you're going to play in fantasy football. They've been surprisingly better against the pass. Stephon Gilmore has played better as the year's gone, and I lost Schroeder. Well, I'll have to edit this. Oh, that's hilarious. Are you back, Schroeder?
Yeah, I'm back.
Well, I announced to the crowd we'll have to edit this. Or we could just show it to them.
I think we should just show it as it is. I think we should just show it as it is.
It really wasn't like us saying something stupid and then put it in the bloopers.
I'm done. No, you said something so stupid I just had to leave and then come back.
For the record, audience out there, there will be one more blooper video. Those may be my favorites, including Joe Osno forgetting who was playing in the game. So that was last week. You missed that one.
Oh man.
But no. Yeah. Gilmore's been pretty good against. He's looked a lot better lately. So for my bad, I have the other guy on the other side of the ball, Tom Brady. Yes.
Whoa.
Yeah. So Brady, I mean, if you look at him statistically over the last few games, just hasn't been on. It has not been that top fantasy quarterback that you come to expect. And he had a bad game against Buffalo a few weeks ago. So I'm kind of using that as the template. Buffalo's awful against the run. And I think Deion Lewis, I think that the running backs are going to be more valuable in this game than Tom Brady. Obviously, if he's been your guy all year, you might have to go with him. But, there's some good quarterbacks out there who might be, on your bench, and he might not have the top game we're all thinking. Here's a really bold one. This is kind of like out there. Todd Gurley. Yes.
Whoa.
Yeah. I don't love Tennessee's pass defense. I mean, that's the main thing about this. I think Tennessee, you mentioned Walker earlier, I think they can put some points on the board. That this might not be a runaway game for LA. I do think they're going to win. I think Tennessee has very little chance at this one. But I think it could be within reach. And we've seen this a few weeks ago, them getting really aggressive at the end of the game. When you're up 40-0, obviously you're going to run the ball a lot, and Gurley got that. Be some more passes in this game due to Tennessee's weakness in the pass defense. So, I am not saying bench Todd Gurley. This is more of a don't start him in daily fantasy. He's one of the top guys. I think you can get some better prices here. I like Zeke better this week. So I actually have Julio Jones in my the corners have been pretty good from New Orleans. That's a big concern. Now, one thing I really didn't give a lot of thought to, Schroeder, was that element of, they have a lot to play for. But that could go either way with the Saints, too. And Julio Jones also did not have a very good game against them 2 weeks ago. So that's kind of my main reasoning behind him. He's a hit-or-miss receiver this season. He could go off. He could go off this week because he's been down for 2 weeks. But I have him on my dislike list this week. And we mentioned Jimmy Graham. That one's no surprise. So
before you go on, Julio did put up 98 yards against New Orleans, which is not bad.
Yeah, not bad. But he, not the,
he didn't have a monster game.
Monster game, no touchdowns. And when I say – a lot of times when I do the hate list, I'm kind of making a bold statement at some of the top dogs.
So you're moving him down to like mid-15 range, like in your wide receiver ranking?
I don't like Kelvin Benjamin this week. It's like, that's not really that brave. Like, you got like a good shot. So I feel like I try to kind of go for more of that. Like, I think they're going to do a lot less than what they might be projected at.
Okay, so, fair enough.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, for the sneaky, these are some guys, daily fantasy, for those of you who are out of the playoffs. If you're in the playoffs, you probably have a good enough team that you don't have to start these guys. But if you're out, daily fantasy is a good thing. Blake Bortles, that was Joe. I got to give him credit. He called it last week. And they're going up against San Francisco, a San Francisco team that has played much better over the past few weeks. This Jaguars team is good. Like, I can't believe I'm echoing these words. I've been thinking it for years, and it finally happened the year that I gave up on them and thought they were terrible. But Bortles, you know, he's put up some good numbers recently with him, but he's ranked very low, even still. And going up against the San Francisco team that's been susceptible on defense, they, you know, had their ups and downs, but I think he's a good play. Mike Gillislee, I didn't mention him earlier. With Rex Burkhead being out, Mike Gillislee, this could either make or break it. Depends on his usage. He's been a healthy scratch. Burkhead, who's been the typical goal line back, has won the job. But now that he's out, this could open them up. It's also, you know, you could kind of see it's his old team. It could be a revenge game. You just never know how that goes. Seems to be a pattern. I like the running back for New England this week a lot, and I think he's the touchdown guy. So Mike Gillislee, Stills, going up against an awful Kansas City pass defense. He's been a little quiet the last few weeks. Jay Cutler's been off, but his competition, you know, the pass defense has played pretty well the last few weeks that he's struggled. So going up against a team that can fix that, you know, wide receiver woes pretty quickly. Jay Cutler just has to play better in this one. And I think Kenny Stills can get it. And for my tight end, Ricky Seals-Jones. Yeah, I'm on the bandwagon. So he's been a little quiet the last few weeks after kind of emerging. And that's the perfect time to buy low because he's playing the New York Football Giants. And I should really just say the New York Flag Football Giants because that's about how well they've played, like a flag football team. So I like Ricky Seals-Jones. I think he's a good pick.
Always a good call and always fun to root for as well.
Yeah.
All right, Rob. Well, you took my quarterback. I also had Blake Bortles for San Fran. Blake Bortles has been one of the best quarterbacks the past 4 weeks, if not the best, and put up a ton of fantasy points. So you're going to want to play him if you have like a middling option, like a Phillip Rivers. I'd rather play Blake Bortles this week. At running back, I have a guy that's coming back from injury. At least I hope he's coming back, and that's Joe Mixon versus Detroit. I think this is actually going to be a closer game than people are expecting. I like Mixon if he's back to get a lot of work in this game in a relatively close scoring game and actually try to continue to assert himself for next year because that's where the Bengals are looking. But I do like him a lot in this game. And this is someone who I've already mentioned at wide receiver as well, and that's Juju Smith-Schuster. Antonio Brown is out. You love Ben Roethlisberger. So someone has to be catching his passes, and I'm going to say it's Juju Smith-Schuster. The guy has had an outstanding rookie year, very promising future, and I think this could be a very big game for him against the porous Houston pass defense. And then I am going deep in the barrel here, Rob. Deep in the barrel.
He paid off last time.
Trey Burton versus Oakland.
Good call. Good call.
Zach Ertz is healthy, but here's the reason why. Nick Foles has been, while he was the backup, passing in whenever they do drills to his tight end, which on the second team, that's Trey Burton. He and Burton seem to have a little bit of a chemistry going, and they're facing Oakland, who's not good against the tight end. And so Trey Burton actually caught a touchdown last week, and I like him to get one this week as well and to have close to 30 to 40 yards, putting up a pretty solid day for the tight end spot. I think there are much worse options than you could do for Trey Burton this week.
Yeah, Trey, that's a good call. That's a really good call because Trey Burton, I mean, he's going really cheap
Yes.
in DraftKings. And they run a lot. They run some two tight end formations there in Philly. And even when Ertz is in, it's like, Trey Burton got a touchdown. He's there. He's
Yeah.
part of that offense. So,
Yeah.
yeah, good call. And, yeah, so I was thinking one last thing we can do, just me and you, just share one of the worst trades that you saw this fantasy football season. Just kind of reflect. Do you have any off the top of your head or one of the worst trades?
Yeah. So let me bring this up to make sure I don't butcher this. But again, guys, this is in a dynasty league, so values are going to be a little bit different.
I know what you're going to say. You're about to steal mine.
Oh, are you? Wait, which one are you picking? Because there's a couple in there. Are you picking DeAndre Hopkins?
First, I'll see.
Are you picking the DeAndre Hopkins trade?
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
I'll say that.
Well, Rob, you go ahead and you talk about that one. I'll pick a different one.
DeAndre Hopkins for Zach Ertz. It was straight up, right? Straight up.
It was straight up.
Oh,
but it was pretty much straight up.
I had Ertz at one point. I was like, I didn't think anybody would give me DeAndre Hopkins. And this is when Deshaun Watson went down. So I guess the mentality, he was thinking like, oh, well, his value goes down. But wide receivers in dynasty leagues, you guys want to hang on to these guys. They are gold, especially those high talented players. And Zach Ertz, I mean, he's been great. Don't get me wrong, but he has a history of not being great, and he's just kind of emerged this year. So, and it's tight end. So I don't know. You keep Hopkins. Anyways, I'm facing the guy who has Hopkins.
Yeah. So that's gonna burn you this week probably because Hopkins has been phenomenal. He's been the best wide receiver in the NFL this season.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about gameplay. I think he might be number one in points too.
Him or Brown was.
Yeah, he's number two, but I would actually say he's probably played better than Brown, especially since he's been having a backup quarterback the past 6 weeks or so as well. But Rob, since you picked that one, I'm going to pick another one, and this happened before the season, and I was pretty outraged about it. And that's a DeMarco Murray for Michael Thomas trade, also in Dynasty.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Michael Thomas, coming off a sensational rookie year, was traded again. And what makes this all the worse is that he was traded to the same guy that did the DeAndre Hopkins trade and got DeAndre Hopkins. So he has both.
He's going to kick my ass.
He has both DeAndre Hopkins and Michael Thomas. Yeah. And he traded him for DeMarco Murray, a running back that had a great year last year, but has Derrick Henry nipping at his heels and has had a very long injury history. And so that trade also, I was just, I don't know what people are thinking.
Now I'll say one more trade because I was the beneficiary. Yes. I traded DeMarco Murray as well, and Amir Abdullah for Marquise Lee and Zeke Elliott. Yes, this is when the Zeke suspension happened. So I am actually not. I ended up having the second worst record in the league. That speaks to the rest of my team.
But you got Zeke.
So I have a good future, though. Dynasty, you go with the younger guys. Don't ever, make trades where it's a really old guy for a young guy who looks like he's going to be around for a long time. Even if you have a chance to win the championship, sometimes you're better off just putting one of your bench guys in and just rolling with it. I know Joe on the show won a dynasty league last year doing that. He was trying to tank the season, and he kept winning. So, keep your young guys, especially the top guys.
Yeah, and if you want to hear more about Dynasty, we're probably going to be doing a show this offseason around that exact topic, kind of advice on what you should be thinking about, who are some of our favorite players, what you need to be looking for in the NFL draft, and that type of thing. But please go ahead and like and subscribe to our video below. You can also send us an email at ffanonymous3@gmail.com, or you can shoot us any tweets you want at ffanonymous3 as well. For me and Rob, thanks for listening in, and remember, stay addicted.